Katie Morgan stood at the entrance of the Galactic Naval Academy and felt her heart racing in her chest. The building stretched high into the sky of Varix Prime, all gleaming metal and transparent panels that showed the stars beyond. She was the first human to ever walk through these doors. Her small duffel bag hung from her shoulder and contained everything she owned. Behind her, the transport shuttle that brought her from Earth was already preparing for its return journey. There would be no going back now. The Academy had accepted students from 73 different species across the Allied systems. Everyone knew their names and their histories. The Varixians were tall and gentle, their world a paradise of soft breezes and calm seas. The Sulathi were delicate creatures who came from a moon with barely any gravity. The Keltheran had 4 arms and came from a world of philosophy and art. Then there was Earth, a Class 12 death world, a planet where nearly everything wanted to kill you, where the gravity crushed bones of most species, where the atmosphere was so rich in oxygen it would intoxicate visitors, where predators hunted in the darkness and storms could level entire cities. Katie walked through the entrance and immediately felt eyes on her. Hundreds of them. Cadets in their gray uniforms stopped their conversations and stared. She was shorter than most of them, but her body was compact and muscular in ways theirs were not. Evolution had built her ancestors to survive, to run from things that chased them, to fight when running was not an option. Her bones were dense and heavy. Her muscles were packed tight. Her reflexes were faster than anything most of these species had ever encountered. Orientation took place in a massive hall with seats arranged in curved rows. Katie found a spot near the back and sat down carefully. The chair was designed for Varixian bodies and felt fragile under her weight. An instructor walked onto the stage. He was Keltheran, his 4 arms moving in graceful patterns as he spoke. His name was Varesh and his voice came through the translation device everyone wore. "Welcome to the Academy," Varesh said. "You are here because your worlds believe in you. Because the Alliance needs officers who can think clearly and act with honor. You come from different places, but you will leave as brothers and sisters in service." Katie wanted to believe him. She wanted to think that her species and her world would not matter here, but she could feel the stares, could hear the whispers that the translators tried to filter out. Human, Deathworlder, Predator, Primitive, Dangerous. The first week passed in a blur of classes and exercises. Katie excelled at tactical analysis because human military history was filled with conflict and strategy. She understood engineering because humans had to build things that could survive Earth's harsh conditions. She memorized the star charts and the protocols and the regulations. But the social world of the Academy was harder to navigate. Most cadets kept their distance. They were polite but cold. They did not invite her to study groups or meal tables. Her roommate was a Varixian named Lynn, who seemed kind enough but clearly did not know what to make of her human companion. Lynn slept in a hammock that swayed gently. She ate foods that looked like flower petals. She moved with a grace that made Katie feel like a boulder rolling downhill. But there were 4 cadets who were not just distant. They were hostile. Their leader was named Vex and he was a Dracor, which meant he came from a world of hot winds and red sands. He had scales that shimmered blue and green and eyes that were too large for his narrow face. His 3 friends followed him everywhere. Then was tall and thin. Zola had markings on his face that showed his family status. Prixus was quiet, but his eyes were always calculating. Katie first heard them talking in the mess hall during her 3rd day. She was sitting alone with her tray of food that the kitchen staff had specially prepared for human biology. The foods looked strange to everyone else, but tasted bland to her. Vex and his friend sat 2 tables away, but their voices carried. "They let a human in," Vex said. "A creature from a death world. What is next? Will they accept the silicon parasites from Hex 9? Humans are barely civilized," Then added. "They still have wars on their own planet. They kill each other for resources. I heard their world is so dangerous that children die just from the weather," Zola said. "What kind of species lets that happen?" Prixus said nothing but nodded along. Katie kept eating. She had been warned about this. The diplomatic team on Earth had spent months preparing her. She was not just a cadet. She was an ambassador whether she wanted to be or not. Every action she took would be analyzed. Every word she spoke would be reported. If she failed, it might be generations before another human was accepted into galactic society. So she ignored them. She focused on her studies. She trained in the gymnasium where the gravity could be adjusted. She ran on the track where her endurance made other species stare in amazement. She practiced the breathing exercises her instructors on Earth had taught her for staying calm. But Vex and his friends did not stop. They bumped into her in corridors and did not apologize. They hid her equipment before practical exercises, so she had to scramble to find replacements. They spread rumors that humans smelled bad or that they were aggressive or that they could not be trusted. Lynn noticed what was happening. One evening as they prepared for sleep, she spoke carefully. "You should report them to Instructor Varesh," Lynn said. "What they are doing violates our conduct code." Katie shook her head. "It will make things worse. I just need to keep my head down." "Vex will not stop," Lynn said. "His family has political power. They opposed human admission to the Alliance. I think he wants you to fail." Katie lay in her bed and stared at the ceiling. She thought about Earth, about the oceans and mountains and forests, about the people she left behind who were counting on her, about the future where humans and aliens might work together as equals. She thought about the 12 weeks of training before she left Earth, the combat instructors who made her practice until her body moved without thinking, the diplomats who taught her to smile when she wanted to scream. She could survive this. Humans were good at surviving. The harassment got worse as the weeks continued. Katie tracked each incident in her personal log the way her training officers had taught her. Document everything, stay calm, respond with facts, not emotions. But the incidents were getting harder to ignore. During a zero-gravity combat simulation, Vex deactivated her magnetic boots while they were supposed to be working as a team. Katie tumbled through the training module and crashed into a wall hard enough to bruise her ribs. The instructor reviewed the footage but said the evidence was unclear. Vex claimed it was an accident. His friends supported his story. Then someone hacked her personal terminal and corrupted her thesis project. 3 weeks of work vanished in an instant. Katie spent an entire night reconstructing the analysis from her backup notes and memory. When she showed up to morning formation with dark circles under her eyes, Vex was smiling. He knew. They all knew. The breaking point came during an orbital mechanics class. The instructor was demonstrating trajectory calculations when Vex raised his hand. "Instructor, I have a question about the human," he said loudly. The classroom went silent. 30 cadets turned to look at Katie. "What is your question?" the instructor asked carefully. "Humans evolved from prey animals, correct? They were hunted by larger predators on their world. Does that mean they have prey instincts? Should we be concerned about panic responses during combat situations?" It was wrong on every level. Humans had been both prey and predator. That was what made them dangerous. But Katie understood what Vex was doing. He was trying to make her seem weak in front of everyone. "Humans evolved as persistence hunters," Katie said before the instructor could answer. "We chased prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Our ancestors could run for days without stopping. We are predators." "That sounds like a threat," Vex said. "It is biology," Katie replied. The instructor ended the discussion, but the damage was done. Now everyone was looking at her differently. Not with fear exactly, but with a new awareness. The human was a predator. The human was dangerous. Lynn tried to comfort her that evening. "He is trying to provoke you. He wants you to lose your temper so he can claim humans are violent." "I know," Katie said. "You should still report this to Instructor Varesh." "It will not help." "Then what will you do?" Katie did not have an answer. On Earth, she would have handled this differently. On Earth, there were ways to deal with bullies that involved direct confrontation. But she was not on Earth anymore. She was in a place where violence was almost unknown, where most species had evolved on peaceful worlds, where conflict was resolved through discussion and mediation. She was trying to fit into their world, but they would not let her. The next incident happened in the combat training facility. It was a large room with padded floors and walls that could adjust to simulate different gravity levels. The class was learning basic self-defense techniques. Instructor Varesh paired students carefully, matching species with similar physical capabilities. Katie was paired with a Keltheran named Trev, who was strong enough to match her when the gravity was adjusted. They practiced holds and releases. Trev was respectful and careful. He understood that Katie was denser and heavier than she looked. They worked well together. Then Instructor Varesh was called away for an emergency. He left his assistant in charge, a young Salathi named Peril who had only been teaching for a few months. Peril was nervous and uncertain.
He did not have Voresh's authority or confidence. Vex saw his opportunity.
He approached Peril and spoke quietly. Katie could not hear what was said, but she saw Peril nod reluctantly. Then Vex walked across the training floor toward Katie. "The Deathworlder needs a real challenge," Vex announced. His voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. "One opponent is too easy." Other cadets stopped their practice. They formed a loose circle around Katie and Vex. Some looked uncomfortable. Others seemed curious. No one intervened. "We should stick to the assigned partners," Katie said calmly. "Are you afraid?" Then asked. He moved to stand beside Vex. "I am following protocol," Katie said. Zola and Prixus joined their friends. Now there were 4 of them facing her. The training room had gone completely silent. "Unless you admit humans do not belong here," Vex said. "Unless you request transfer back to your primitive world." Katie felt her heart rate increase. Her body was preparing for conflict even though her mind was trying to stay calm. This was exactly what her instructors on Earth had warned her about. This was the moment where everything could go wrong. "I am not going to fight you," Katie said. "Then you are a coward," Vex replied. He moved first, not a training move. A real attack. His fist came toward her face with full force behind it. Katie's body reacted before her conscious mind registered the threat. This was what 10,000 hours of training had built into her muscles. This was what evolution on a death world had written into her genes. She deflected his fist with her left arm and struck his elbow with her right hand. The joint bent wrong. Vex screamed, then grabbed for her from the right. Katie dropped low, rolled with his momentum, and used her legs to launch him into the air. He hit the wall 3 meters away. Zola came at her more carefully but still committed to the attack. Katie stepped into his strike and drove her knee up to meet his face. He went down hard. Prixus hesitated. His 3 friends were on the ground. The human had barely moved. She was not even breathing hard. He attacked anyway. Katie caught his arm, controlled it, and took him down to the mat. She held him there with a restraint technique that immobilized him completely. 12 seconds had passed from start to finish. Katie stood up and looked at the crowd of shocked faces. 4 cadets were injured. 1 was unconscious. 2 were crying. Vex was holding his arm and moaning. "Someone should call the infirmary," Katie said quietly. The security team arrived within minutes. They were professional and calm, but Katie could see the tension in their movements. They had never dealt with anything like this before. Violence at the academy was almost unheard of. Serious violence was completely unprecedented. 2 medical teams rushed into the training room with floating stretchers. They loaded Vex and his friends carefully. Vex was still conscious and screaming about his arm, then had regained consciousness but seemed confused. Zola was bleeding heavily from his face. Prixus was the calmest of the 4, which probably meant he was in shock. A security officer approached Katie. He was Verixian and clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "Cadet Morgan, you need to come with us," he said. "Am I under arrest?" Katie asked. "You are being placed in protective custody while we investigate the incident." Katie did not argue. She walked between 2 security officers through corridors that seemed longer than before. Other cadets pressed themselves against the walls as she passed. Some looked afraid. Others looked curious. A few looked angry. They took her to a small room with a table and 2 chairs. It was not a cell, but it was clearly designed for detention. The walls were bare metal. There was a camera in one corner. The door locked behind her with a solid click. Katie sat down and waited. She had been in worse places. Earth had prepared her for discomfort and isolation. But she had never felt more alone than she did right now, thousands of light years from home, waiting to find out if she had just destroyed humanity's future in the stars. Time passed slowly. No one came. No one spoke to her through the communication panel. She had nothing to do but think about what happened. About the look on Vex's face when she broke his arm. About then hitting the wall. About how easy it had been to hurt them. That was the worst part. It had been easy. They were not trained for real combat. Their bodies were not built for violence. They came from gentle worlds where conflict was rare. She could have killed them without much effort. The thought made her sick. Finally, the door opened. Instructor Voresh entered along with 2 other officials Katie did not recognize. One was a Sulathi with elaborate markings. The other was a species Katie had only seen in files, something with too many joints and skin like crystal. Cadet Morgan, Foresh said. This is Administrator Keln and Judge Verix. They are here to conduct the preliminary investigation. Katie stood at attention. Yes, sir. Sit down, please, Administrator Keln said. Her voice was soft. We have reviewed the security footage from the training room. We have also taken statements from the other cadets who witnessed the incident. Before we proceed, I want you to understand that you are not required to answer our questions without legal representation. I do not need representation, Katie said. I will tell you exactly what happened. Very well, Judge Verix said. His voice sounded like wind chimes. In your own words, describe the events that led to the altercation. Katie told them everything. She started with the weeks of harassment, the insults and sabotage, the incident with the magnetic boots, the corrupted thesis. She explained how Vex and his friends had confronted her during class, how they attacked first, how she defended herself. You claim self-defense, Judge Verix said, but you hospitalized 4 cadets in 12 seconds. That seems excessive. They attacked me together, Katie said. I responded with the minimum force necessary to neutralize the threat. Minimum force? Administrator Keln looked skeptical. You broke bones and caused serious injuries. Yes, ma'am. If I had used maximum force, they would be dead. The room went silent. The 3 officials looked at each other. Katie realized she had made a mistake. She was being honest, but honesty was not helping. Foresh spoke carefully. Cadet Morgan, I think what my colleagues are trying to understand is the difference between your capabilities and your actions. Can you explain that? Katie took a breath. Humans train for combat from a young age in our military programs. We train to fight and survive in situations where failure means death. When I was attacked, my body responded with trained reactions. I assessed 4 threats. I neutralized each one using techniques designed to stop an opponent without causing permanent damage. I could have struck different targets. I could have used more force. I chose not to. You chose not to kill them, Judge Verix said. Yes, sir. But you could have. Yes, sir. Another long silence. Katie watched their faces and tried to read what they were thinking. It was impossible. These species did not show emotion the way humans did. You will remain in detention while we complete our investigation, Administrator Keln said finally. We will review all evidence and interview all witnesses. The formal hearing will take place in 3 days. They left. The door locked again. Katie sat in the empty room and wondered if she would ever see Earth again. The next 3 days were the longest of her life. They brought her food and water, but no one spoke to her. She exercised in the small space to keep her body active. She ran through combat drills in her mind. She thought about her family and friends back home, about the messages they would receive if she was expelled, about how her failure would affect every other human who wanted to explore the galaxy. On the morning of the 3rd day, they came for her. She was escorted to a formal hearing room with high ceilings and rows of seats. The room was full. Cadets and instructors and officials she did not recognize. At the front was a panel of 5 judges from different species. Katie stood in the center of the room under bright lights. She wore her cadet uniform, which had been cleaned and pressed. She kept her back straight and her hands at her sides. The lead judge spoke. Cadet Katie Morgan of Earth, you have been charged with aggravated assault against 4 fellow cadets. How do you respond to these charges? Katie looked at the panel. I acted in self-defense against multiple attackers who violated Academy regulations and endangered my safety. I used appropriate force to neutralize the threat while minimizing permanent harm. The medical reports show significant injuries, another judge said. Broken bones, internal bleeding, severe trauma. This is not minimal harm. With respect, sir, I am a human from a Class 12 death world. My biology is fundamentally different from most species here. What seems like excessive force to you is basic defense for me. I held back significantly. Perhaps that is the problem, a third judge said. Perhaps humans are too dangerous to integrate into the Academy. Katie felt her stomach drop. This was what she had feared. This was why Vex had pushed her. To prove that humans were violent and uncontrollable. Then Varesh stood. Permission to speak, honored judges. Granted. I have taught at this academy for 32 years. I have trained thousands of officers from dozens of species. In that time, I have never seen a cadet show more restraint under impossible circumstances than Cadet Morgan demonstrated. The judges looked interested. Explain. The security footage shows 4 attackers moving simultaneously against 1 defender. This is a lethal threat scenario. Most species would panic. Most trained officers would use maximum force. Cadet Morgan assessed each threat, neutralized it with precise technique, and stopped the moment the danger was over. She did not continue attacking. She did not seek revenge. She administered first aid and called for medical assistance. Varesh paused and looked at Katie. She is exactly the kind of officer the Alliance needs. The hearing continued for 6 more hours. They showed the security footage frame by frame. They called witnesses who testified about what they saw. Some spoke in Katie's defense. Others claimed she was dangerous and unpredictable. Vex himself appeared via communication link from the Infirmary, his arm in a regeneration cast, and demanded that Katie be expelled and banned from Academy grounds. Through it all, Katie stood silent unless directly asked to speak. She answered questions honestly and directly. She did not make excuses or apologize for defending herself, but she also did not boast or show aggression. She was calm and professional, in a way that seemed to unsettle some of the judges. The final witness was Lynn, her Varixian roommate. Lynn walked to the center of the room and faced the panel of judges. Her voice was quiet, but clear. "Katie is the kindest person I have ever met," Lynn said. "She is patient with me, even though I am clumsy and slow compared to her. She helps me with my studies. She tells me about Earth and human culture. She is careful not to hurt anyone, even accidentally. When we first became roommates, I was afraid of her. But I learned that humans are not what we think they are." "What do you mean?" one of the judges asked. "We think they are violent because they come from a violent world, but they are also protective and loyal and brave. Katie could have hurt Vex and his friends much worse. She chose not to. That is not violence. That is mercy." The hearing ended. The judges dismissed everyone except Katie. She stood alone in the empty room and waited for their decision. The lead judge spoke. "Cadet Morgan, this panel has reviewed all evidence and testimony. We find that you acted in legitimate self-defense against an unprovoked assault. The charges of aggravated assault are dismissed." Katie felt relief wash through her body. "Thank you, honored judges. However," the judge continued, "this incident has raised serious questions about human integration into the Academy and the Alliance. We are recommending additional oversight of your training and regular psychological evaluations. I understand. You are confined to Academy grounds for the next 30 days. After that period, we will review your status again. It was not perfect, but it was better than expulsion." Katie saluted and was escorted back to her quarters. Lynn was waiting there with a small group of other cadets, including Trev, her Keltheran sparring partner. "We wanted to make sure you were okay," Trev said. "I am fine," Katie said. "Thank you for coming." Over the next few weeks, something changed at the Academy. Cadets who had avoided Katie before now approached her with questions. They wanted to know about Earth and human history. They wanted to understand how her species had survived on such a dangerous world. They wanted to know how she stayed calm under pressure. Varesh invited her to assist with combat training classes. At first, Katie was reluctant, but the instructor explained his reasoning. "Most of our cadets come from peaceful worlds," he said. "They have never faced real danger. You can teach them what that feels like and how to respond, not with violence but with clarity and control." So Katie began teaching. She showed them basic self-defense techniques adapted for their different biologies. She explained threat assessment and situational awareness. She taught them that combat was not about aggression, but about protecting yourself and others. The classes were popular. Cadets from all species attended. They practiced slowly and carefully at first, then with more confidence. Katie was surprised by how much she enjoyed teaching. It felt good to share what she knew in a positive way. One day, Varesh pulled her aside after class. "I received a message from the Alliance Council," he said. "They have been following your case closely. There is considerable debate about human integration." Katie felt her heart sink. "Are they going to ban humans from the Academy?" "No," Varesh said. "They are considering expanding the program. They want to admit more human cadets next year. Your actions, despite the controversy, have shown that humans can exercise judgment and restraint. That is valuable. I just did what I was trained to do. Exactly, Varesh said. And that is what makes the difference. The semester continued. Katie maintained her academic standing in the top 10% of her class. She competed in the academy games and won several events that required endurance and strength. She made friends slowly but genuinely. Vex and his 3 friends were expelled after the hearing concluded. The investigation found evidence of sustained harassment and premeditated assault. Their families protested the decision, but the academy stood firm. Violence and discrimination would not be tolerated regardless of political connections. Katie thought about them sometimes. She did not feel satisfaction or revenge. She felt sad that it had come to violence. She wished there had been another way. But she also understood that some conflicts could not be avoided. All you could do was choose how you responded. 6 months after the incident, the academy held its semester-end ceremonies. Cadets gathered in dress uniforms to receive honors and recognition. Katie stood with her class and listened to Varesh announce the academic rankings. When her name was called for top tactical performance, the applause was loud and genuine. Lynn hugged her tightly. Trev and dozens of other cadets offered congratulations. It felt like acceptance, like belonging. That night, Katie sat in her quarters and composed a message to Earth. She knew it would take weeks to reach home, but she wanted her family and friends to know what had happened. She wanted them to understand that the galaxy was complicated, but also full of possibilities. She wrote about the incident honestly, about the fear and anger and confusion, about standing in that hearing room and wondering if she had destroyed everything. But she also wrote about what came after, about the cadets who approached her with curiosity instead of fear, about teaching combat techniques to species who had never needed them before, about the slow building of trust and friendship. "We are different from most species in the Alliance," she wrote. "We come from a world that demands strength and vigilance, but we also understand something important. Strength without control is just destruction. Power without purpose is just chaos. What makes us human is not that we can fight. It is that we choose when to fight and when to show mercy." She ended the message with a promise. "I will graduate from this academy. I will serve with honor. I will help build a future where Earth and the Alliance stand together. Not because we are the same, but because our differences make us stronger." The final semester at the academy was both challenging and rewarding. Katie had proven herself academically and physically, but now she faced the ultimate test that all cadets dreaded, the deep space survival exercise. Each cadet would be assigned to a small crew and sent on a month-long mission through contested space. They would face simulated emergencies, resource shortages, and tactical challenges designed to push them to their limits. Katie was assigned to a crew of 6. Besides herself, there was Lynn, Trev, and 3 cadets she knew less well. A Dracor named Shen, who was nothing like Vex, a Sulathi navigator called Prin, and a quiet observer from a species called the Yarthik, whose name translated roughly to Whistler. Their ship was a standard Academy patrol vessel called the Starbound. It was small and efficient with just enough space for the crew to live and work without comfort. The mission briefing was simple: navigate through the Kepler sector, investigate 3 anomalies, and return to base within 30 days. On the first day, everything went smoothly. The crew worked through their assignments with professional efficiency. Lynn handled communications. Trev managed engineering. Prin plotted their course through the sector. Katie was assigned tactical officer, which meant she monitored sensors and coordinated defensive systems. The first anomaly turned out to be a debris field from an old mining operation. They cataloged it and moved on. The second was a natural phenomenon, a dying star that created beautiful patterns of radiation. They took measurements and continued. Then on day 12, they encountered the third anomaly. It was not on any official charts. A distress signal coming from a small asteroid in an unmapped region. The signal was weak and degraded, but clearly artificial. "Should we investigate?" Lynn asked. She looked to Katie as tactical officer. Katie checked her sensors. "I am not reading any immediate threats, but this region is outside our assigned parameters. The Academy regulations say we must respond to distress signals," Trev pointed out. Shen agreed. "We should at least determine if someone needs help." They approached the asteroid carefully. The distress signal grew stronger as they got closer. It was coming from what looked like a small research station built into the rock. The station appeared abandoned, but life support was still functioning at minimal levels. "I am detecting one life sign inside," Katie said. "Faint but stable." "We need to board the station," Lynn said. Katie did not like it. Something felt wrong about the situation, but they could not ignore someone who might be in danger. She assembled a boarding team. Herself, Trev, and Shen. The others would remain on the Starbound and monitor the situation. They crossed to the station using magnetic grapples and entered through an airlock that cycled reluctantly. Inside, the station was dark and cold. Emergency lighting cast everything in red shadows. The air was breathable but tasted stale. They found the survivor in what looked like a medical bay. It was a species Katie did not recognize, something with gray skin and too many fingers. It was unconscious but alive. Trev scanned it with their medical equipment. "This being is in hibernation," Trev said. "Induced medically. They are stable but will not wake without proper treatment." "Can we transport them to our ship?" Katie asked. "Yes, but we should understand what happened here first." They explored the station carefully. It became clear that this had been a research facility studying something dangerous. The logs they found were corrupted, but fragments mentioned an experiment gone wrong, a containment breach, an evacuation that left this one researcher behind in emergency hibernation. Then the alarm started, not on the station but on their ship. Lynn's voice came through their communication devices. "Katie, we have a problem." 3 ships just appeared on sensors. "They are not broadcasting identification. They are moving toward our position." Katie's instincts went cold and sharp. "Pirates?" "I think so. Get the Starbound ready to move. We are coming back now." They grabbed the hibernating researcher and rushed back to the airlock, but they were not fast enough. As they crossed back to their ship, the 3 unknown vessels opened fire. Not at the Starbound, but at the station. The asteroid exploded in a flash of heat and debris. The shockwave hit their ship hard. Alarms screamed. Systems failed. Katie pulled herself through the airlock and ran for the bridge. The rest of the crew was already there trying to keep the Starbound functional. "Hull breach in Cargo Bay 2, Prin reported. "Life support at 60%. Main engines offline." The 3 pirate ships were closing in. They were larger than the Starbound and heavily armed. Katie's tactical display showed weapons charging. "They are hailing us," Lynn said. "Put it through." A face appeared on the main screen. It was humanoid but twisted and scarred. The voice that came through was translated into something cruel and amused. "Academy ship, you have something we want. Surrender the survivor you took from the station and we will let you live." Katie looked at the unconscious researcher they had rescued. "Who is this person? Why do you want them?" "That is not your concern. You have 60 seconds to comply." The communication cut off. The crew looked at Katie. She was the tactical officer. She had to make the call. "We cannot give them the survivor," Lynn said quietly. "They will kill them." "They will kill us if we refuse," Shen pointed out. Katie studied her tactical display. 3 ships against 1. The Starbound was damaged and outgunned. In any normal situation, surrender would be the smart choice. But these were not normal circumstances. The pirates had destroyed the research station to eliminate evidence. They would not leave witnesses. "Prin, can you get the engines back online?" Katie asked. "Maybe in 10 minutes. We do not have 10 minutes. Katie thought fast. She thought about the debris field from the destroyed station, about the asteroid's gravity well, about the Starbound's maneuvering thrusters which were still functional, even if the main engines were not. "I have an idea," she said. "But everyone needs to trust me," she explained quickly. It was dangerous and probably stupid, but it was their only chance. The pirate ships closed in. Katie waited until they were almost in weapons range. Then she fired the maneuvering thrusters at maximum, not away from the pirates but toward the debris field. The Starbound tumbled into the cloud of spinning metal and rock. The pirates followed, confident they had their prey cornered. But Katie had studied the debris field carefully. She knew where the large pieces were. She knew how they moved. She used the thrusters in short, precise bursts to navigate through gaps that seemed impossible. The pirate ships were larger and less maneuverable. They crashed into debris at high speed. One lost its shields and took critical damage. Another got caught in the asteroid's gravity and could not break free. The third ship tried to back out, but Katie had anticipated that. She used the Starbound's one working weapons battery to target the debris around the pirate ship. The exploding metal created a chain reaction that disabled their engines. Within 2 minutes, all 3 pirate ships were crippled or destroyed. The Starbound limped out of the debris field, battered but intact. The crew sat in shocked silence. Then Trev started laughing. Soon everyone joined in. The kind of laughter that comes after surviving something impossible. That was the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced, Lynn said. Welcome to human tactics, Katie replied. They made emergency repairs and resumed course for the academy. The unconscious researcher was placed in their medical bay under careful monitoring. Katie sent a full report of the incident through secure channels. The response came back within hours. An Alliance military ship was being dispatched to investigate the destroyed research station and capture any remaining pirates. When the Starbound finally docked at the academy 31 days after departure, Instructor Varesh was waiting. He listened to their report with his forearms folded. When they finished, he looked at Katie for a long moment. You violated 3 regulations during that encounter, he said. Katie stood at attention. Yes, sir. You also saved your entire crew and protected a civilian at significant personal risk. That is exactly what an Alliance officer should do. He smiled, which was rare. Congratulations, Cadet Morgan. You and your crew passed the survival exercise with the highest marks I have ever awarded. The final weeks of the semester passed quickly. Katie completed her remaining coursework and prepared for graduation. The ceremony was held in the main hall where she had first attended orientation 2 years earlier. She wore her dress uniform and stood with 300 other cadets from across the Alliance. When her name was called, she walked across the stage and received her commission as an ensign in the Alliance Navy. The applause was thunderous. Lynn was crying. Trev was cheering. Even cadets she barely knew were celebrating. After the ceremony, Varesh approached her one final time. You have your assignment, he said.
The Alliance cruiser Horizon.
They requested you specifically. What will I be doing? Tactical officer. It seems your reputation has spread. Katie thought about everything that had happened. The attack in the training room. The hearing. The survival mission. All the moments where things could have gone wrong but somehow turned out right. Sir, do you think other humans will have an easier time than I did? Varesh considered the question carefully. No, I do not think it will be easy. Integration never is. But you have shown